Hello, I am Sinfoil. Alright, we got a new batch of eggs from the Ice and Fighting Egg event, and I wanted to drop an analysis for which Eggmons could be potentially useful. So, this is the first time I am covering Eggmons on this channel, and I would like to take this opportunity to address a common misconception that I hear fairly often, and that is Eggmons are useless. And this cannot be more incorrect. If you leave an Eggmon at 1 stars, of course it's going to be terrible. 300 HP with 60 base defenses, this thing is going to get obliterated by any sync. But the whole point of Eggmons is that you have to invest on them. You have to nurture them, feed them cakes, give them potential tickets, and once you do, you get a perfectly functional unit. And I am not telling you that you have to raise them to 5-star potential 2020, this is not going to happen. But every month we get a whole collection of resources to raise an Eggmon to 3-star potential with 3 out of 3 affinity. And if you have any spare bronze tickets from bad gacha pools, you can raise it to 4-star potential. And when we hit this benchmark, this is very capable. This is almost comparable to other gacha units. However, that is a fundamental issue of Eggmons, in that 95% of them are comparable to gachas. There is a few that have discernible niches, but most of them kinda do the same thing as another gacha, and there is an opportunity cost, because no Eggmon has a grid, so you don't get move gauge refresh, you don't get move point refreshes. And for example, a striker cider here. It's unique in that it's a mixed bug striker. Well, Lusamine can kinda do it nowadays, but it can also raise its critical hit rate, and it has bug balls as its primary offense, and that gives it competition with a Borg, for example. If you scout a Borg, it's a 5-star gacha, you have more special attack than a 4-star striker cider, and generally it operates better, and you didn't have to invest the tickets on it. But there is a few Eggmons who can yield you great results if you select very carefully what you need to patch on your team. And that is the kind of thing that I want to discuss today. Okay, let's kick this off with the Lapras batch, shall we? For all these comparisons, I am going to use 4-star potential and 3 out of 3 affinity as my baseline. For the reasons I mentioned earlier, I think this is very achievable, and you can reach this with all the free egg resources we are given every month. If you're using a striker Eggmon in particular, you also want to raise them to 5 out of 5 sync level, because this will raise the power of their moves as well as their sync, and that helps a little bit, just something to consider. So, striker Lapras. This kid offensively is identical to Lorelei, and the primary attacking move is Blizzard. There are other Blizzard strikers like Lusamine and Mew, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but I want to focus on Lorelei because they function almost identically, and they are both Lapras, so we got a species competition to begin with. However, for striker Lapras, on the get-go, it hits a lot harder than Lorelei. It has 70 more special attack, and it also has many more multipliers. Lorelei as a tech unit is built towards disruption, so it only gets hostile environment 1 as a passive, and both Ice Beam and Blizzard have a 10% chance of freezing the target, and Lorelei gets an additional reroll to get this chance to happen. But it's so minimal that you cannot really depend on this. It's more so a perk of the move. Like, you spam Blizzard, and sometimes you freeze a target, and that can prevent damage, which is nice, but it's not the focus of the kit. Now, compared to Lorelei's Lapras, Striker Lapras has X accuracy, so we got some offensive self-sufficiency. If you get 1 accuracy buff at +2, then you can still miss Blizzard, but if you use X accuracy twice, then you will not miss Blizzard as long as the target doesn't have any evasion buffs. And you also get On My Mark. This raises defenses by 1 stage, as well as critical hit rate. And these defenses are Fantina tier, so you are still going to get chunked pretty hard, even if you get this to filter damage just a tiny bit. But this is the interesting part about the Striker Lapras. It fixes Blizzard accuracy, which no other Blizzard user can do without necessitating accuracy buffs from a support, from say Lily or Signa Surelesa, or by using Hail. A perk of Blizzard is that under hail, it cannot miss, even if the target has evasion buffs. Like, it will always land the target. So that's usually how people fix Blizzard accuracy. But Striker Lapras has the niche in that it doesn't need that help. However, it sacrifices that by the fact that it cannot buff its special attack. It needs buffs from a special support. And this is one of the very rare instances where Roxanne is an excellent support for Striker Lapras, because it's rare when we get a special striker who only buffs crit but not the special attack. And that is something interesting about Lapras. It has a very strong 3-bar move at 5 out of 5. Blizzard is actually one of the hardest hitting AoE 3-bar moves in the game, and it's a lot stronger than Discharge and Earthquake. So when you account for the multipliers, it also gets a lot stronger, because you get Super Duper Effective 1. This complements Eggmons very nicely, because you will more than often than not use them on super effective stages. And Power Reserves 2 is surprisingly easy to set up, because these defenses are not good. So after a Fierce Sync, you are more than likely set on red health, and you can take advantage of the boost. And accounting for lucky skills, this thing can hit decently hard. However, I was never a fan of AoE strikers, because it's very difficult to set up denials with AoE damage, and usually you take 3 to 4 rounds of combat to kill a row, so it depends on your playstyle and what you like to do. And one thing about the Striker Lapras is that the fact that you have to give it a special attacking support means that you need support to begin with, so it's not very self-sufficient, and you need support anyway. Why are you not using Lusamine? Why are you not using Price, for example, with Hail support? And it has a niche where it can spam Blizzard without help, but it still needs support, so I don't think it's a very great striker, unfortunately. Moving on, we got support Lapras, and something that really bothers me about support Eggmons is that even with benchmark that I prefer going for, these stats don't let them tank well in the slightest. They die real quick. So the way I see support Eggmons are as an auxiliary support. You use them to buff and patch something lacking in your team composition. And for Lapras, its only buff is a special attack. You can buff speed a little bit, but the focus is maxing a special attack for your entire party. And this is problematic because it's very rare when you need a special attacking buffs and nothing else. Because it's most special strikers have X special attack and they can raise a star on their own, so they don't really need help with it. They more so need defenses, they need critical hit support or something or other, not a special attack. However, this kid is identical to support Charmander, and I have a lot of experience using it. So this still has some niche in that you can use it on triple support team compositions, for example alongside Misty and Sabrina, both of whom can be decent strikers, but they cannot buff a special attack. And if you on that archetype, you will have to depend on Sabrina's special attacking buffs from her move, from Sixth Sense, and you will have to waste your healing as well. But if you pair them with support Lapras, you can use buff the entire party's special attack and start doing damage a lot quicker, which is very nice. However, I have experience with Charmander, like I mentioned, and I think support Charmander does a lot better than support Lapras because Overheat has more accuracy, it's stronger, and you can also give it the Dauntless Loki skill to fix its special attacking drops, and you also get some boosts. Support Charmander can have multiplier, so this is one of the rare instances where an Eggmon is outclassed by another Eggmon, but unfortunately, if you're going for this gimmick, I think support Charmander does a lot better. Support Lapras does have a natural remedy, and if the latest full force taught us anything is that clearing a status can be very convenient. Like that demonic Gengar with poison gas pretty much traumatized everybody. But like I mentioned, I think support Charmander does better than this in general. Last but not least, we got the Tech Lapras, and this one is the shiny of the batch if I am not mistaken. And most people will be chasing for this. Unfortunately, it does have a niche. We got a new weather setter, so there is another source of hail now. Hail was always in a compromising situation because Candice is the only other hail setter, but more so, there aren't very many hail abusers. Price comes to mind, but when Summer Steven was introduced, he pretty much fixed hail teams on his own because he sets perma-hail, and he is a very self-sufficient striker, so he can carry the team all on his own. However, Tech Lapras does have differences from Candice and Summer Steven. You get Healing Hail 1 and Snow Shelter, so you don't hurt yourself under hail like a dummy, and you restore HP. And you also get Hanging There, which raises your defenses by 1 stage and also adds regeneration. And both of these stack, so you get a 12% HP every time you take an action under hail. So that means that you get a Hail Setter with incredible sustain. This thing doesn't have largely better defenses than Candice, but it's still really good. The fact that you regenerate so much HP means that you could ostensibly tank with this. It wouldn't be that great of an idea because this is not that great bulk, but you restore so much health for a couple rounds of combat that it really wouldn't matter. It would be like using a potion. Either way, this thing plays for sustainability, so there is a niche in that. Icy Wind is okay, it's a strong AoE move, but dropping speed can be done by other units more optimally. For example, Clement and even Clay in a pinch, so you don't have to invest on Tech Lapras necessarily just for the speed drops. Now, one huge issue I have with Tech Lapras is that it is really slow. It has no means of generating speed, unlike Candice, who has X speed. So you will have to slap a Fast Track 2 on this thing or give it speed support. But Hail does stall for time because enemies have to get hit by the Hail recoil before attacking, so that generates gauge. You stall for time with regeneration, so if you told me to use a Hail Setter, I wouldn't mind using Lapras over Candice if I needed more sustain, but it's not necessarily better, so take it as you will. Alright, why don't we cover the next juiciest batch? So here we got a Striker Primeape. And this little feller faces a very unfortunate situation in that he has a steep competition from a gacha with a nearly identical offensive kit, and that gacha is Bruno. Bruno also has Karate Chop and Cross Chop, and there is a clear opportunity cost because if you invest on a Striker Primeape, you could be using Bruno instead for similar results, although Striker Primeape does operate better than Bruno because it generates a lot more speed. It has a slightly less attack, but that doesn't matter. What matters here is that a Striker Primeape can max speed almost immediately, because if I am reading this right, whenever you crit with this thing, you get a +4 speed boost, so after using Raise You a couple times, you basically have max speed. And Bruno does have gauge issues, so this is actually a very nice perk of using a Striker Primeape. Even then, Bruno does have his advantages, because first off, Striker Primeape gets Critical Strike 1, but Bruno gets Critical Strike 2 as a passive, so he has a stronger multiplier from the get-go, and he can also raise his special defense, so he's a bit bulkier. And Bruno also has Dire Hit Plus, and that is very important for this kit, because Cross Chop is a plus crit move, just like a Stone Edge, so you already have a 50% chance of critting with this, and with a couple crit buffs, you have a 100% chance of critting, so you use Dire Hit Plus once, and you get guaranteed crits. Unlike a Striker Primeape, who needs to buff twice with Raise You, because this raises crit by 1 stage, so you have to spend 1 more turn buffing, unlike Bruno. And because Dire Hit Plus is a stronger buff, it means you can use Bruno on a couple battle build stages, so there are pros and cons to both of them. Although, in general, I think Striker Primeape is better at this kit, but at the same time, I don't recommend either of them as strikers, because Cross Chop has accuracy issues, so you have to pair them with Leaf or Lily or whomever to fix that, so there are problems with both of them. Support Primeape, this thing is the shiny of this batch, I hope I am not mistaken about that, and it is very interesting. Like, this thing looks phenomenal at first glance, because this is the first time we get an Eggmon that can buff critical hit rate for the entire party. It's the first one that hits Dire Hit all, so that is a niche in and of itself, but the rest of the kit isn't that unique. The problem here is that this thing faces direct competition from supports like Maylin and Torchic. So, like I mentioned earlier, support Eggmons cannot tank. Even though support Primeape does get healthy healing and Fierce State 2, this is still not enough healing to mitigate all the damage that you're going to take from your poor bulk. So, unless you go balls to the wall, like 5 stars 2020, you cannot even begin thinking about the tanking with support Primeape. For that fact, it's an auxiliary support, and that gives it a disadvantage over Maylin or Torchic, who can actually tank. They have much better defenses and they are a lot beefier. However, Support Primeape does have the perk in that it has Karate Chop, and this is a spammy one-bar move, so you will never have gauge issues. This thing will never compete for gauge in your party, which is real nice. And Strike Together also raises speed by 1 stage, so compared to Maylin and Torchic, this thing gives you better gauge, so that is a perk. It also has Brick Break. I am not sure why people go ballistic over this. This also happened with Support Pinsir, but Brick Break is somewhat pointless because I can only think of maybe 2 times in the history of this game where shields are a problem, specifically the Grass type training event and Entei, because crits bypass defensive shields, so breaking them does nothing for you because your little Primeape can already buff your crit and ignore shields either way, so it's kinda there. It doesn't really do that much and the damage is not great to begin with. So my issue with Primeape is that it doesn't do more than Torchic and Maylin. It has Sustain with healthy healing, but Maylin can also Drain Punch. That is a great gimmick about her. After a couple sync stacks, Maylin can actually do like 800 damage and restore health repetitively if you give her enough speed support, so that is a very nice advantage that she has, and a gimmick that separates her from Torchic, but I don't see that gimmick with Support Primeape. It just kinda does the same with Regeneration at the start of the battle, which helps, but it's fine, nothing spectacular. And we got a Tech Primeape, and this thing is a tech gimmick is dropping defense through Rock Smash. Rock Smash has a 40% chance of dropping defense, and you also get on a roll 1, so that's an additional reroll to drop defense, and every time you use this, you're basically guaranteed to drop defense on the target. Something fun you can do with Primeape is give it the Defense Crush 2 lucky skill, and it will give you an additional roll, so you get the whatever chance from Rock Smash, and then an additional 20% chance to get another defense drop, which is a real fun gimmick. So this thing is a good bruiser. Like, you Rock Smash for a bit of cheap damage, you drop defense nearly guaranteed, and your striker can deal better damage as a result. But the problem here is that there is another Rock Smash gacha who does almost the same, and that gacha is Broly. Broly, however, is a lot slower. Although they have similar bulk because Broly gets like 300 more HP but less defenses. Broly is a lot slower, and when you use him you usually have gauge issues, but Primeape never worries about that because you get Karate Chop for the option of a 1-bar spam, and you also get Keep It Up to buff your already decent speed, and this also adds regeneration so you can heal yourself. However, Broly does have potions, so that gives him more support utility, and I am not sure why you would use this over Broly, like just spending all the resources when defense reduction can be done better by other units. Like for example Kukui, who gives you AoE drops, so you don't focus on a single target, but rather you tank the defense on the entire enemy field. And if you didn't know, every time you drop defense twice, it's like using X attack again on your striker, so defense drops are very powerful. And if you want a bruiser for your defense drops, you could be using Broly either way, but Primeape does have its niche. It's a lot faster, and the defense drop chances are a lot better than Broly, but spending all your egg resources on this, I'm not sure about that. And now for the unfortunate garbage. Both Seal and Machamp are probably meant for the general egg pool after the event is over, but we gotta see what we can salvage here. So first off, we got a Striker Dugong, and this thing is very similar to the Striker Lapras, but less interesting. But it carves a niche for itself. First off, we got Icicle Spear. Ignore this. The Kid is built for a special offense because your Sync is a special, you have X special attack, and Blizzard your strongest attacking move. You also have identical passives to Lapras. You got the Snow Shelter for a Hail mode, but unlike Lapras, you can buff your special attack, you can raise your speed, and also give yourself sustain through regeneration. However, you still need crit support and you need accuracy support for Blizzard, and in these instances you have to pair this with Signa Surelesa or give it Hail support. And if you're using Hail support, why are you not using Price to begin with? Because Price on his 3-5 grid gets some invigorating Hail tiles, and Icy Wind becomes a lot stronger than Blizzard as a result. And unlike Striker Lapras, you cannot fix Blizzard accuracy on your own, so you have to have a hail on this or a lot of accuracy support, and by that point you might as well use Lorelei instead of investing on this. So it's fine, but the regeneration gimmick doesn't even help you because even Price gets healing hail. No, don't use this. Support Dewgong. This thing is absolute trash. And the reason is because this thing is meant to tank. This is a especially defensive tank, and the problem with support Eggmons, as I mentioned earlier, is that with the benchmark that I normally lay down, these defenses are not going to help you tank unless you give them very hard potion support. And you might as well start tanking with Misty if you're going to buff your special defense and tank enemies that way. And it's so unfortunate because if they gave Dugong X special defense all, it would have given it a unique gimmick where you could buff the entire party's special defense without having to depend on NPRs. And that would be a gimmick, but there is no reason to ever use this over Misty or any other support who can buff a special defense. Like even Drake performs better than this. And we got the Tech Dugong, who is probably the most tragic out of the bunch, and this thing's tech gimmick is freezing things with Ice Beam with Hostile Environment 1. And very unfortunately for Tech Dugong, there is a unit we discussed earlier who does the exact same thing but better, and that unit is Lorelei. Lorelei just flat out has the same key and executes it much more easily because Lorelei has more defenses, so she can actually tank. She can also add gradual regeneration with her trainer move. Dugong does the exact same thing. She also has X speed to raise her speed, and she also has Blizzard for the possibility of AoE freezes. And even then, both of them are worse than Price at freezing because Price gets 2 hostile environment 1 tiles with Ice Beam. So it's really sad, but this thing is straight up outclassed by other units. And if you thought that Tech Dugong was sad, oh boy, wait until you see the entire batch of Machamp Eggs. So first off we got a Striker Machamp, which is probably the most useful out of the bunch, which is not saying much. However, this thing is a strange hybrid between Bruno and Corina, because your main attacking move is Close Combat, but you get to keep a 1-bar spam in Karate Chop, which Corina loses upon Mega Evolving. She doesn't get access to Vacuum Wave after sinking for a first time. But that doesn't even matter, because Corina outclasses Machamp on every department. Corina gets more HP, she gets more attack, better defenses. Corina has less speed, but her trainer move maxes her speed, so that doesn't even make a difference. And Corina can also Mega Evolve, and she has a grid. And Machamp's multipliers don't even help it because, oh boy, you get power reserves too, but Corina gets power reserves 5. She can also stop the defense drops with stats school, and oh boy. If there is something about Machamp and Corina is that they have the exact same pacing issues. They are equally as slow at buffing their stats because you have to raise your critical hit rate by 1 turn every time. Same deal with Corina, but no reason to ever use this over Corina. So, I got a hypothetical question to ask you. It is the year 2020 and you are a developer at DNA. Your next task is developing a set for an Eggmon, and this Eggmon is intentionally mediocre because it's supposed to go on to the general egg pool after its event is over, and you don't want this to be better than other gachas. You want to future-proof this. So what do? Do you give it bad moves? Do you give it bad buffs? Or do you give it an incongruent moveset? Why don't you do all 3 at the same time? So, Support Machamp is super tragic. I have not seen a set this bad since the beginning of the game. Okay, you got a strike together, and this trainer move is held by a myriad of other Eggmons, and it's already outclassed by Skyla because Skyla can buff speed and defense, and she can also raise attack with Fanfare 2 on her 2-5 grid, so there is no gimmick here. But it can only raise attack, and its only physical attacking move is Karate Chop, and it's Sync, I guess, and then you got a 3-bar special move in Focus Blast with no way to support it. So Focus Blast in and of itself wouldn't be a bad gimmick if you had Piercing Gaze. But because at 5-5, it is one of the strongest 3-bar moves in the game. It's actually ridiculously strong, even better than Overheat, and the only downside is the accuracy. So if you had some way of fixing that, you will have a gimmick here, but the entire kit works against Focus Blast. And I am fixating on Focus Blast because it's the only salvageable thing on this kit, but besides that, this thing has no gimmick. Like, already this thing is outclassed by support Primeape, and we already discussed that. And there is no way to support Focus Blast unless you do a full gimmick to try and fix it, and by that point you use Sol Galeo, dude. So, wow, dude, this thing is tragic. Wow. And next up is Tech Machamp, and I am not even going to bother raising its stats. This thing's Tech gimmick is lowering speed. You get 1 bar spam in Karate Chop and Low Sweep, which is guaranteed to lower speed. And hanging there raises defenses, gives regeneration, but see, the thing about speed drops in this game is that they are largely useless except on Legendary Arena, maybe, and even then it's a hard if you want to use them. And there are units who can just drop a speed and give you more in exchange. For example, Clement gives you AoE speed drops, and the main reason you would want to drop a speed is to raise multipliers. It's for Cakewalk and Hunter's Instinct. And even then, speed drop multipliers are very mediocre because first off, you have to debuff the enemy 6 times for the multiplier to take its full effect, and you have to do this for every row of enemies if this is a 3v9 encounter. So when you single target it, you're just wasting time. You just use Clement to get the multipliers on every enemy. And if you are very hard pressed to single dropping speed, you might as well use Onyx and Brock, because Brock has a K-Walk integrated on his sync. You can further enhance it with Haymaker, and you also get a 1 bar spam, much like Karate Chop and Potion support. So this is also super bad. There is no gimmick here. And now for a little bonus round, I want to discuss the Kangaskhan Eggs. They are not included on this batch because they predated the Ice and Fighting Egg event, but I honestly think all the Kangaskhan are better than the whole event combined, so I just wanted to let you know about their blessings. So, we got the Striker Kangaskhan, and I'll be quick. We got Mega Kick with Piercing Gaze. You got a potential 200 base power move with accuracy issues, but you give it Piercing Gaze and this move cannot miss. Even if the enemy stacks evasion buffs, you can always connect Mega Kick. And also, Striker Kangaskhan happens to be the shiny of the batch. So that means that you get to flex a shiny with an insane combination of moves. So, the other user of Mega Kick is 5-star gacha, Chris, one of the older gachas in the game. She was released at launch, and Kangaskhan is flat out better, even at 4-star potential, because she has better stats. So the reason Chris is as bad as she is because they tried to nerf her. DNA knows the potential for Mega Kick, and I just have no idea why they gave Piercing Gaze to this monstrosity, because Kangaskhan reaches a much higher damage ceiling, and at 5-star potential, which is the same as Chris, you get a much beefier attacking stat. The one disadvantage to Kangaskhan compared to Chris is that you don't have a type effectiveness, but it doesn't matter, dude. You are spamming a sync every time. This thing hits like a truck. And with the much beefier attacking style, you can do much better damage with Striker Kangaskhan with no downsides. Striker Kangaskhan can also self a critical hit rate, unlike Chris. So Striker Kangaskhan is literally everything Chris ever wanted to be. And she does it better because you even get Body Slam for the potential of some utility, so you can paralyze something in case you are bored of murdering things with Mega Kick. So if you have to invest on something, it better be a Striker Kangaskhan. This base kit is bonkers. This is extremely good. Support Kangaskhan. This thing is much less exciting than Striker Kangaskhan, but we'll see what we can do with this. So, you got potions with a speed support. Does that ring any bells? I am going to pull the Skyla card here. So, Strike Together is a very mediocre buffing move compared to Skyla, because Skyla can max your speed, defense, and she can also buff attack with a fanfare on her grid. And she also has much more intensive potions because she gets MP refreshes, she gets Master Healer tiles, so she does this job a lot better. So we gotta look at the rest of the kit if we want a gimmick. You get a Body Slam, so you can paralyze targets, but there is another potion user who can do that, and that is Pikachu. And your other gimmick is Double Edge, so... Oh, haha, you can murder yourself with Double Edge, that's so funny. But there is actually an utility move that you can do with Double Edge. I'll put an example on the side. So when you use Double Edge and you destroy yourself with it, the enemies actually stop attacking you for a short period of time. They have to wait for your unit to perish, and then they start taking actions again. So in that interval you can execute more moves, but this is a super obscure strat that doesn't have very many useful applications, so there is no real gimmick here. This thing is outclassed by Skyla. And finally we have a Tech Kangaskhan, and on a surface level this thing looks outclassed by Kukui because you have a Leer and your first instinct might be, oh, this is a Leer bot and it is probably worse than Kukui. However, it has a lot of tools in its kit to distinguish itself from Kukui and even be better on certain instances. So Tech Kangaskhan in general has much less speed. The greatest perk that Kukui has is that he's an insane gauge battery. He fixes move gauge on his own because of his insane speed stat, and you can also give him the lucky skill Fast Track too, so he can generate the speed and fully augment gauge. And he also gets move gauge refresh 4 on Leer, so he's a very spammy option. But Kangaskhan is a lot slower, but it has sustain. With Keep It Up, you can give regeneration to yourself, and unlike Kukui, you don't really need to give potion support to this thing. Like, you just heal yourself. Every time you use Leer, you can proc regen, so that is real nice. It's a Kukui with better sustain. And it also gets a Stomp on its kit with Aggravation 1. So a Stomp has 30% chance of flinching, and with Aggravation 1 it gets augmented to 51%, so that means that it's the same chances as Acerola, and it's also the second skill on its passives, so you don't even need to go for a 3 passive Kangaskhan, you can stop at 2 passives and it will be functional. And you also get Body Slam to paralyze things, so if you are bored of leering things, you can disrupt things with Flinch or paralyze them. And this is also an additional leer bot for Champion Stadium, which is a very good utility. So at 5 stars it even has better bulk than Kukui. No, it's comparable. It has much higher HP, but overall this is basically Kukui, but built for survivability. And unlike Kukui, you don't need the 3-5 grid for your flinching, because he needs a 3-5 or Accelerock staggering 5 or whatever it is. So yeah, this is a Kukui that is way more accessible. And we should be done here. I'm just taking a double look-see through the list just to ensure I didn't miss anything, but I am gonna put up an infographic for a minor tier list on what you should be investing on. In general, this entire egg batch is underwhelming because you get a lot of units, but there are other units who can kind of do the same thing, and there are no Eggmons who have a straight niche, except for the Kangaskhan's, and the Kangaskhan's are not even part of the event. So, in my opinion, you should save the resources from this event and then spend them on a Striker Kangaskhan or a Tech Kangaskhan. You will get a lot more out of them from anything else in this batch, which is kind of sad to say, but it is the reality we live in. So, yeah, thank you for watching, and see you next time.